Have you ever noticed the more you open your heart to family, the more it feels like you're handing over pieces of your peace? It starts with good intentions. You want to be honest. You want to stay close. You want to feel connected. So you open up, like an old journal you've kept for years. But somehow, the more you share, the more the quiet in your life begins to vanish. Not because your family doesn't love you, but because love, especially later in life, is rarely simple. It comes with layers, expectations, opinions, emotions that swell and twist like vines around a house you've spent a lifetime building. And when you start laying everything out on the table, you may end up inviting conversations that echo long after the room is emptied. I used to believe full transparency was the highest form of trust. If I just shared everything, my worries, my plans, my past, it would pull us closer. But age has taught me something quieter, something stronger. Not every truth needs to be spoken, not because it's shameful, but because peace, real peace, requires boundaries. And at this stage in life, peace isn't a luxury, it's a right you've earned. So today, I want to talk with you, not at you, about 5 things I've learned to keep quietly tucked away after 70. Not to be secretive, but to be wise. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling more exhausted than understood, or wished you'd held back just one sentence that changed everything, this message is for you. And if you're new here, welcome. We're building something special, a place where seniors can be honest without being exposed, strong without being loud, and grow older with grace, calm, and dignity. Let's begin. Let's start with a big one. Money. Not the kind you carry in your wallet, but the kind you've built over decades. Quietly, patiently, through skipped vacations, long hours, and decisions no one else saw you make. We've been told to be transparent with our families, to keep them in the loop. And on the surface, it sounds responsible, even loving. That's what I believe too. So did Martin. Martin is 81, a retired engineer with soft eyes and steady hands, the kind of man who still irons his shirts, even when he has nowhere to go. He lived his life with discipline, budgeting, saving, investing, not to be rich, but to feel safe. One day, thinking it was the right thing, Martin sat his 2 sons down and opened the financial curtain. Bank accounts, pensions, the deed to the house, even a printed spreadsheet, color-coded, showing exactly what he'd worked so hard to build. He expected gratitude, maybe a warm smile. What he got was something different. Questions, suggestions, gentle at first, then louder. "Dad, why are you still living in such a big place? Shouldn't we think about assisted living before something happens? What's your long-term care plan?" One son offered to help manage things. The other began calling more often about the budget. Even his vacation plans got reviewed like a business proposal. Martin told me it wasn't that they didn't care, it was that they cared out loud so much that I started to feel like a guest in my own decisions. And that's the danger. The moment you unveil everything, the space around you tightens. What once was your freedom becomes a family committee discussion. And sometimes, people who were once distant suddenly grow interested. Not in you, in your assets. The cousin who never visited? Now they're asking about your will. The grandchild who forgot your birthday? Now they remember to call right around tax season. Let me be clear. Planning ahead is smart. Have a will. Assign a power of attorney. Choose someone you trust. But handing over the full blueprint too early, that's not planning. That's surrender. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of your spending. You don't have to explain why you bought a new recliner or gave to a charity. Your money is not just numbers. It's your story, your sacrifices, your choices, your right. Privacy isn't secrecy, it's self-respect. Protect your peace. Share what's necessary when it's truly necessary with those who've earned your trust and know how to handle your truth without mishandling you. Because once your finances become a family conversation, you may find yourself justifying things that should never need explaining. Let's talk about something that seems so natural to share: our health. The truth is, our bodies don't whisper the way they used to. They creak, they sigh, they speak up more often. Sometimes in the knees, sometimes in the back, sometimes in the way sleep slips through our fingers at 3 a.m. So we talk about it. We say things like, "My shoulder's been acting up," or "I felt a little off this morning." We don't mean it as a cry for help, just passing conversation, a moment of honesty between people who care. But here's what we don't always realize. To us, it's a flicker. To them, our children, our grandchildren, it can feel like an alarm bell. Let me tell you about Claire. She's 76, widowed, strong in spirit, and still gets up before dawn to walk her terrier through the neighborhood. One weekend, after hours spent tending her garden, she casually mentioned to her daughter over coffee, "My shoulders are a little sore today." That's it. No complaint, no drama, just a passing sentence. But within 48 hours, her daughter had booked her a physical therapy appointment, called twice a day, and gently suggested hiring someone to help around the house. Claire wasn't angry. She understood it came from love, but she also felt handled, as if one sore muscle had rewritten her whole identity, from capable to fragile. That's the quiet danger of oversharing the small stuff. You think you're sharing connection, but sometimes you're surrendering independence, not by force, but by perception. And once that perception shifts, it's hard to turn back. You find yourself being watched more closely, your choices quietly questioned. Should you really be lifting that? Maybe don't drive at night anymore. Let me take care of that for you. Before you know it, the rhythm of your life starts playing to someone else's tempo. Now listen, if something serious is going on, a true health concern, something that impacts your daily life, you absolutely should speak up. You deserve care. You deserve help. But every little ache, every restless night, you don't need to narrate your aging in real time. Because sometimes the more you talk about what hurts, the more others forget everything that still works. And that's the real loss. Because you are more than your symptoms. You are not just a collection of conditions or appointments or test results. You are full mornings. You are favorite books. You are small victories no doctor ever charts. Oversharing small health details can shrink your world, not physically, but emotionally. And little by little, you begin to feel like your life is just maintenance rather than meaning. So here's a quiet truth. You don't have to report every ripple to prove the ocean is still moving. Trust yourself. You've lived long enough to know what's serious and what's just a Tuesday. Protect your emotional space. Choose what to share, when to share, and how much to let in. Because peace doesn't come from being constantly monitored. It comes from being seen as whole, not as fragile. And that is dignity. Now let's talk about something that wears a quieter face, but often leaves a deeper bruise. Family conflict. You've lived long enough to see it all unfold. Disagreements over money, parenting choices you don't quite understand, tensions between siblings, words that were said years ago but still hover in the air like dust in sunlight. And being the elder, the parent, the grandparent, the one who's seen it all, it's natural to feel the urge to step in, to mediate, to smooth things over, to be the calm voice in the room. But here's what time has taught me, and what I hope to pass on to you. The more you say, the more you risk being remembered for the wrong thing. Let me tell you about Miriam. She's 80 now, sharp-minded, soft-spoken, the kind of woman whose advice is often asked for, until it isn't. One afternoon, during a simple visit with her daughter, she gently suggested that maybe her grandson, 5 years old at the time, could start tidying up his toys. It wasn't a critique, not a command, just a passing thought delivered with a smile and a cup of tea. But the silence that followed was thick. Her daughter's face shifted. The warmth cooled. The next phone call came later than usual. Then, not at all. That one sentence, so small, so harmless, somehow grew teeth, and it bit into their bond. A crack formed, and over time, it never fully healed. Here's the quiet truth most don't say out loud. Even when spoken with care, your words arrive through someone else's filter, shaped by their stress, their insecurities, their own private battles. You think you're offering support, they hear judgment. You're trying to help. They feel exposed, and suddenly you're not the bridge. You're the wedge. You try to ease a disagreement between two of your adult children. Now both think you've picked a side. You mention a concern about how your daughter-in-law speaks to the kids. Your son pulls away, quietly, slowly, but surely. What started as wisdom becomes interference, and what was meant as love becomes a wall. So what should you do? You choose silence, not as surrender, but as strength. You say, I trust you to work it out, or simply, I'm here if you ever want to talk. And then you let go. Let them stumble. Let them disagree. Let them learn the way you did, through their own mistakes, their own growth. You already paid the price of those lessons. They need to earn their own. Your job now is not to step into every fire, but to be the quiet, steady flame that never flickers, no matter how loud the winds around you become. That's not distance. That's wisdom. Because when family storms rage, sometimes the greatest gift you can offer is not your voice, but your calm. You've lived through decades of holiday dinners, awkward silences, and long-forgotten feuds. You know this truth better than most. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. And peace? Peace doesn't come from solving every family problem. It comes from protecting your place in the family, as the one who leads with love and guards it with grace. Let's talk about something quieter than conflict, but often heavier to carry: regret. By the time we reach this chapter of life, every one of us has a shelf somewhere in the back of our mind, lined with little boxes labeled, what if, I should have, I wish I had. Some of those boxes stay closed for years. Others get opened on a quiet morning when the coffee's gone cold and the house is too still. It's human. It's honest. It's part of living a full, imperfect life. And sometimes, without meaning to, we speak them aloud. Not as complaints, but as reflections. Let me tell you about Norma. She's 79, a retired school teacher who gave everything to her family, raised 4 children, stood by her husband through illness, built a life of steady love. One afternoon, during a walk with her youngest daughter, Norma said quietly, "Sometimes I wish I hadn't given up my dream to travel when I was young." Just a sigh, a moment, a sliver of her inner world. But her daughter heard something else. She heard sacrifice. She heard disappointment. She wondered, was I part of what held her back? Was I the reason she never went? You weren't worth the one I stayed in. You say, I should have moved somewhere warmer, and they feel like they were never home enough. You're trying to share your truth, but they carry it like a wound. There's another side to this too. The more we speak about regrets, the more others begin to see us as stuck, living in the rear view, dwelling on what didn't happen, even when, deep down, you still love the life you've lived. And sometimes, without realizing it, they begin treating you differently, more delicately, as if your best days are behind you, as if your story is slowing down. But you and I both know, you are still here. You are still writing pages. You are still the author of what comes next. So here's a gentle shift I've learned. Instead of saying, I wish I had, try this. I've learned so much from the life I lived. That one change, it turns sorrow into wisdom. It turns longing into legacy, because not all regrets need to be spoken. Not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. They belong to you. And sometimes holding them close is the kindest thing you can do for the people who love you. You don't have to pretend your past was perfect. You don't have to smile through old pain, but you do have the right to protect the emotional space between you and the people who see you as their foundation. Peace in these years doesn't come from fixing the past. It comes from making peace with it, quietly, with grace. Now let's talk about a topic that seems, on the surface, to be all about logic, but underneath it touches some of the most tender parts of family life. Your plans for your assets. We've all heard the advice, be transparent. Don't leave anyone guessing. Make it clear now so there are no surprises later. And yes, having a legal plan is essential. A will, a power of attorney, someone you trust to carry out your wishes when the time comes. Those things protect your future. But there's another kind of protection, one that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and that's the protection of your peace, by keeping the details to yourself. Let me tell you about Edna. She's 83, a retired nurse, frugal but generous, with 3 grown children she's proud of. Wanting to avoid any confusion after she's gone, Edna decided to lay it all out in advance. She told each of her children exactly what to expect, who would receive what, how the house would be sold, which accounts would be divided, even who would inherit which heirlooms. At first, it felt responsible, maybe even loving, but something changed. Her middle son, once easygoing, began calling more often, asking about timelines, wondering if maybe the house should be sold now, while the market's good. Her daughter, who had moved out of state years ago, began asking why her share wasn't larger. After all, hadn't she sacrificed the most? And the youngest? He grew quiet, uncomfortable, distant, like the entire subject had left a bitter taste in his mouth. Edna told me something I'll never forget. I felt like they stopped seeing me and started seeing the estate. That's the hidden cost of too much transparency too soon. It turns love into calculation, genuine presence into subtle positioning, and it opens the door to something no parent wants to invite: comparison. Even when spoken with care, your plans can unintentionally stir up resentment, competition, or entitlement. And once people know what's coming, they may begin to view your choices through a different lens. Why are you spending so much on that vacation? Should you really be buying a new car? Wouldn't it be better to save more for the grandkids? They won't always say it aloud, but you'll feel it. In the glances, in the hesitations, in the quiet shifts in how they treat your independence. And slowly, without meaning to, you might find yourself justifying joy, defending generosity, or hesitating before doing something simple, like treating yourself. Let me be clear, your legacy is not just what you leave behind. It's how freely you lived while you were here. And your assets? They're not just numbers. They're memories. They're years of sacrifice. They're yours. You don't owe your children a sneak peek at your will. This isn't a movie premiere. It's your life, your decisions, your freedom. So yes, make a plan. Make it legal. Make it clear. But make it private. And above all, don't let your golden years become a negotiation table. Because if someone only leans close when the topic is inheritance, you may need to ask yourself, are they cherishing you or calculating you? Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's sacred. You've spent your whole life giving time, advice, support, sacrifice, support. Now is the time to guard something else. Your freedom, your voice, your right to enjoy life without explanation. So here we are. 5 quiet truths. 5 small choices that carry the power to protect something no one else can guard for you. Your peace. You've spent a lifetime giving time, giving comfort, giving parts of yourself to raise families, mend wounds, and hold things together. But these years, they are not just the final act. They are your sanctuary, your stillness, your earned right to choose what gets shared and what gets held close. Because peace isn't passive. It's not something that just happens. It's something you defend. Sometimes with silence, sometimes with boundaries, and often with the quiet wisdom to say, that truth belongs to me. You don't need to explain every dollar you spend. You don't need to report every ache and pain. You don't have to insert yourself into every family storm or unbox every regret just to prove you're still honest. You are honest, you are wise, and you are still whole, even when you choose privacy over exposure. So here's a question worth asking yourself today. Which truths are meant to be shared and which are sacred enough to keep? Not because you're hiding, but because you're honoring. If this message touched something in you, leave us a comment below. Tell us one thing you're choosing to hold closer from now on. Your story might be the spark that helps someone else find their peace. And if you haven't already, subscribe to join this growing circle of thoughtful, strong, and quietly powerful souls. People just like you, who know that aging gracefully isn't about shrinking. It's about refining what really matters. Until next time, take care of your heart, take care of your peace, And never forget, you've earned it.